Greg, at what point should a staffing leader or an owner consider offshore or nearshore support?
Yeah, it's a great question. They should be getting clear on two things before they're ready to go do this. So one is you have to have identified a clear bottleneck in your business. Is it maybe we have a shortage of candidates? I have the bandwidth to talk to people, but we just need more horsepower behind sourcing. And this is the clear bottleneck of my business. Is it we need to do more lead generation research? Is it we need more outbound sales calls? But whatever it is, part one is you've identified a clear bottleneck in your business that you need to solve for. And it should be fairly compact to a single area. It can't be like, we're just really busy with a lot of admin. Part two is you have to have clearly defined processes for that. So if, for instance, you go, we need more sales appointments, my bottleneck is just manpower to go out and make more cold outreach, that's great. But if you're not clear on what that should look like, what good looks like, it's probably not going to work out. But once you get those two things right, it can be a huge shortcut for growth.
Why is it important to identify sort of the exact bottleneck before going the offshore nearshore route?
Yeah, it's important to be clear on what's going to have the greatest point of impact in your business. I think a lot of people also try to stuff too much together. So you see a lot of owners going, hey, I'm spread a million different directions. I have too many emails. I can't keep up with my LinkedIn content. I need more help with sourcing. And they try to like Frankenstein this piece together and it doesn't really work. But when you're able to sit down and say, okay, this is the one single biggest area, then that allows you to get really intentional with that hire and say, I'm going to find somebody who's going to be an A+ at this, and I'm going to be able to manage them and train them to be an A+.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because we wouldn't just hire a utility player just to help grow our business, right? It internally, whether we're looking at offshore, nearshore, I'm saying within our own four walls, we wouldn't just hire somebody to just get more sales, right? We need to hire for a specific function. And when I think about that offshore, nearshore, when I think about that global talent that could support our team, understanding exactly what it is that we need support in first helps us then sort of paint the rest of the picture and find the right piece of the puzzle, I guess, to say.
Yeah, you should be on the other side of the mic, man. You said that perfectly.
Well, just trying to summarize what you just said, right? I'm over here to basically hear good ideas and reiterate them. You know, when I think about it makes a lot of sense to me though, right? And I think, you know, to paint the analogy, right now I'm talking a heck of a lot about AI. And I was just in Chicago for a conference. I'm going to be in Nashville, and I know AI is a huge buzzword and a huge theme right now. And people always ask me, well, what should I do with it? Or what can it be used for? And the answer is it can be used to do anything. Like it is literally the Wild West. It can make your nutrition plan. It can plan your finances, or it can help you source and can help you screen. It can do all of these things. You need to find out where the pain is first though, and then use it to your advantage in this very specific framework. And one of the methodologies that I always use, and I borrow from Trisha Tampkin at More Essentials, is how can AI help me in insert task here? It's a sticky note that she physically had on her computer for a while. And when she came on the show, she taught that to me, and I still use it to this day. And I think, Greg, what you're painting the picture of here is how can offshore, nearshore support help me in insert task here? It's not just doing it for the sake of doing it or bringing on extra team members for the sake of doing it, but it's finding that task or that bottleneck and saying, okay, how can I alleviate this from my day-to-day by using these key players?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's one of the biggest things that people get wrong is they're just like, I'm really busy. Our stuff's not working that well. I'm just going to go hire somebody to deal with a lot of it. And of course, it ends up not.
When it doesn't go well, what then happens? I assume they get turned off to the whole thought and the whole process of what it could be.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest things about growing our practice is reshaping the perception. The majority of agency owners that I talk to, I would say probably somewhere between 7 and 8 out of 10 had a really bad experience with it. And they're like, yeah, I don't think this is going to work that well. It's great to go get cheap labor, especially if they're going to work really hard in their experience, but like it doesn't go that well. And so they tend to get really turned off and skeptical. Interestingly, it ends up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy where if they come back a second time, now they're like, yeah, it's probably not going to work. So I'm not going to be super invested. Like I'm not going to spend top dollar. I'm not going to spend as much time. And if it goes wrong a second time, and then they're just like totally cut off to it.
Do you think it goes wrong because of them and because they didn't have their clearly defined bottleneck or the task that they want somebody to help with, or because of the partner that they partnered with?
A bit of both. And sometimes they have a great partner, but it's for the wrong thing, for instance. There are all sorts of different ways to go about it. Like you can hire an RPO that says, hey, we're going to bring in the person, we're going to train them, we're going to manage them. And maybe for like a really simple project or one-off task, that could be really good. And maybe they would be a great partner for that use case. But if you're like, hey, I need a high performer who can implement our exact way of doing things, that good partner in one scenario is probably not a good partner in that scenario because you need a true internal employee. So sometimes it's the partner, sometimes it's just not knowing where to go. And so, for instance, like one of the things that I look at is often in the staffing space, you're going to want people to get on the phone with candidates. And candidates in the US these days are very turned off by accents in certain parts of the world because we associate it with like calling the airline when we need to reschedule a flight and this like horrible robotic experience. And so that's our association, and like right or wrong, we perceive that. And so like people be like, oh, I've heard India has cheap labor, so I'm going to go hire somebody in India who maybe is phenomenally talented, but they're at a huge disadvantage with their accent. Instead, we should be hiring in Latin America, right? So sometimes it's the partner, sometimes it's location, sometimes it's the lack of investment in training and management.
Is bringing on this type of partner only for senior leadership, only for the organizational level, or is this something that a sales rep can consider? Is this something that a top recruiter can consider? Is this something that other people within the organization should be doing to, I want to say this the right way, not offload their day to day, but get support in their day to day?
Absolutely. So at my last agency, we had 2 account executives doing sales. We had 2 SDRs based in Latin America behind them doing a whole bunch of cold outbound to go schedule sales appointments for them. And then those SDRs had 6 researchers doing all their prospecting behind them.
Who pays for that? Is the company paying for that, or was the sales rep going through that?
I wish I could have gotten my sales reps to do it. No,
and that's where I got it. So that's where I'm kind of going with this. Is this sort of a function where Brad Bialy, the sales rep, is sort of, I don't want to say going around my employer to help arm me with more support and more bandwidth, but are you seeing the industry sort of shift to a mindset where it's not just the organization saying, hey, we're going to set you up for success by having these, I think you said 7 people helping each individual, right? I think you said 2 and 6. That's a lot of team members supporting. Is it something that an individual within the organization too can say, listen, I want to grow. I know I can do better in my seat. If I had more support, I'm just going to go do it myself.
You know what? I haven't seen a lot of that. Probably the closest things I've seen it more in the direct hire space in the 360 model, where a lot of ways that recruiter is running their own business and their own practice. I've seen it happen there. I've seen division leaders say, I'm going to take it out of my P&L. I've yet to see salespeople do it. I love that. I think a really savvy person should be doing it.
I do too. And I think right now they're probably going down the path of AI agents and trying to explore that because it feels a little less risky, maybe. Risky is probably the wrong word. It probably feels a little bit more self-contained. But I mean, I can see a top performer within an organization saying, listen, I can 3x, 4x my output if I had more people to support me. And if the organization isn't going to fund it, well, then if I can 4x my output, I'll fund it myself because that's a check worth writing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What do you see the best firms getting right now as it relates to offshoring and nearshoring?
Yeah, so they're really intentional about it. So like going back to something that we've already said a couple times now, they're really clear on the function that's going to give them the biggest impact in their business. And it can be a lot of different functions. They figure out the region of the world that's going to give them the best ROI. And then they bring that person in and treat them just like any other internal employee. And that last part is the one that I rarely see done well. Like you're like, oh, we have our company meetings and then we have like our offshore team over here. And like, yeah, we do performance reviews and coaching and training for our onshore team. But our offshore team, like we just kind of leave them to figure it out, right? But like bringing them in and treating them as a true internal team member, just like any other, that's the last one that at least scaling my last agency took us a while to get right.
You have to, right? I mean, everyone's on the team. Everyone has the same goal in mind, which is to elevate the brand and elevate the shield, elevate the umbrella. And if you have sort of this us versus them mentality, it probably creates a lot of animosity. It probably creates a lot of tension internally. Maybe illegal, I don't know if segregation is the right word, but it creates sort of these like pockets of employees. And you don't want that by any means. We're all here to achieve the same thing, which is work our best, grow the brand, and do what we can for our clients.
Yeah, exactly.
When you think about offloading key tasks, what's sort of the low-hanging fruit? So where should a staffing owner be thinking right now? What's sort of the easy items to punch out?
So where I recommend somebody starts especially owners of smaller agencies that maybe haven't had the experience of building out larger teams, start with the simple admin tasks. And that's always, it's going to be the lowest cost. It's the easiest work to find somebody to do it well, and it's the easiest work to be able to manage. So, uh, specific activities, prospecting on the sales side. So, going out and building your target lists, monitoring potential clients, like looking at job openings, looking at career moves, finding contact information, doing all the research you need on the sales side. That's where I started with my last agency. It was a game changer for me. Similar to that is the sourcing side. There's no reason why a highly skilled recruiter should be spending any time prospecting. There's a lot of AI tools that accelerate the process, but also most of those AI tools are at best a 6 or 7 out of 10 and still need some human handholding. I want to get to a point where my salespeople are doing zero admin and my recruiters are doing zero admin. So that's always the starting place. Probably the third place would be for an owner of an agency to look to find ways to free up their admin time. But that can be hard to piece together what that should look like.
Is AI a threat to the nearshore and offshore, I guess, existence, right? So if we think about, I know you talked sourcing specifically, and I kind of gravitated to what you said there, right? If we have the tools that can help with sourcing, are you finding more organizations are going the AI route or the nearshore route right now to help with that?
So, yeah, it is a big time, at least to certain recruiters who work offshore and certain agencies who do this. I think it's going to be needed for a while because it's like if you go hop into a tool like Pin, which is great, you're still going to need somebody to go in and clean up those lists for you. You're also going to say, hey, I think we're missing some people. We need to go do some research elsewhere. But I think there's probably going to be a need for like a third of the current sourcing support that there is today. So it absolutely is a threat. Interestingly, what I'm starting to
Yeah.
find though is you're starting to see a lot more of offshoring and nearshoring shifting to higher level talent. And so instead of saying, I'm just going to like go look to hand off admin and that's it, it's like, well, could I go have somebody who cold calls all the candidates and vets them and presents the candidates? Or could I have somebody who's doing appointment setting? And I think that's where we're starting to see a shift in the space.
And it's almost this mindset of if they can do this, why can't they do that, right? If they're getting exceptionally talented or this task is being fulfilled at a high level, let's try the next task. Let's try the next task and sort of bunching away at more things that you can punt off of your desk.
Yep. Yep. But I think a lot of agencies, a lot of international employees who don't have the skill to get on the phone with candidates, I do think they're going to be out of jobs. And I think more and more agencies are going to start to shift away from that.
Yeah, but you also made a good point too, where people still need to look at everything that AI is doing. And your top sales rep shouldn't have to do that. Most of your team members shouldn't have to do that, right? Yes, we need to fact check. We need to look over everything that AI is creating. I am the biggest advocate for that, right? Like we're not just trusting what Claude is putting together as the gospel and saying, okay, just publish it or just do this with it, right? We need some sort of eyes on everything that the AI is creating. So having talent offshore, nearshore, wherever it might be, review that and then say, okay, yeah, it's just another function within the system.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm seeing this happen more and more when somebody comes to me and is like, yeah, sourcing is our bottleneck or admin is our bottleneck, or I need a second brain who can help me just problem solve within the business. Everybody's now coming to me and saying, yeah, they need the recruitment or staffing background, blah, blah, blah. And I need somebody who's really AI savvy so they can start to run all these tools for me.
So it sounds like, and we're kind of going in a circle here, and I'm okay with that. It sounds like the first thing you need to do is identify where the pain is and understand where the bottleneck is. If you don't have this, this isn't the right option for you yet. But if we don't
Yep.
know exactly where the pain is or the task you're trying to alleviate is, it's a hopeful wish, right? We're throwing a coin into a wishing well and hoping for the best. But if we can sort of process out our entire day or our week, and maybe it's truly keeping a scratch pad by your desk of saying all of the things you do throughout the week, and then trying to find those repetitive tasks or the mundane tasks that you don't want to do anymore, that then becomes the framework for what you can get to this global talent.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
Very good. So outside of that, so not having tasks properly identified, not having documentation well, I guess, put together, what are some other areas of challenge that you're finding in the space right now? What are people getting wrong?
Yeah. I think another really big one is just not holding the same bar for talent that they should be if they're hiring in the US. So like a good example is what I typically see is somebody goes, hey, I'm going to hire somebody in India at $1,000 a month or $15 a month. They're like, this is versus this will cost me 5 grand a month in the US when I factor in taxes, or 6 grand. And so they're like, well, this is a quarter of the cost, so I can have a quarter of the expectations. And they're like, they drop the bar so low for these individuals. And so they tend to have a much lower bar when it comes to who they're hiring. And then they set much lower expectations for when that person comes on. Because they're like, well, for me to get a positive ROI, I don't need much. That to me is a big gap. And I would say half the time when I work with a client, one of my challenges is to say like, no, you're not hiring this person. Like, you have to elevate your expectations for them. So what I usually push clients to do is to say, let's forget this person isn't based in the US. If this person was in the US, what would your standard be? Like, what would productivity look like? Your benchmark, whether it's sourcing, whether they're running a full desk, and then what criteria would you have for who you hire? Start with that. Maybe you dial it down a tiny bit if it's not that important, but like it should be at least 80, if not 100% of what somebody produces in the US. And they should come in with those same skills and personality traits.
Set the standard is probably one of my favorite phrases right now
Yeah.
in all areas of my life. And especially in, I'm an active runner training for another marathon block right now and going through the motions. And I think set the standard is one of it's just on my mind a lot, right? I want to set the standard for myself, for my kids, for sort of what we're doing over here. And I think where I'm going with this is the standard doesn't change, right? And I think when you're articulating it, it's okay, well, your standard for the team in Buffalo, New York shouldn't vary from the team that you have in India. You have a standard within your organization. You have core values. You have a mission, vision. You know what it means to work for your organization. It would be wrong to expect different from somebody just because they're not in Buffalo, New York. We have to set the standard and we need to hold that standard.
Yep, exactly. So when I work with an agency who's looking to hire and they're going to hire a sourcer, the first thing I say is like, what's your expectation for productivity? Most of them are like, well, we haven't done this before, so I don't know. And I'll say, great. Either you personally or one of your high performers need to go track. So like for the next week, look at exactly how many qualified resumes you produce per hour. That is now going to be the benchmark. And when we're interviewing somebody, hold them to that. Or if we're going to go say, find a full desk recruiter, what are their KPIs that you expect? That's the same standard that we're going to be looking for.
Where does security come into play on all this? So I think it's easy for a leader to monitor their team when they're working within the office in Buffalo, New York, right? I can see what they're doing. I can see their machines. I can see the computers, things like that. Now, for the first time, I want to trust somebody from India working for my organization. Greg, I trust you as sort of the middle person to coordinate all of this. And yes, I respect you. I trust you. But at the end of the day, I don't really know this person. I'm not doing everything. I don't know where they are in theory. How does security come into play? And I want you to talk to the leader who's considering this, but maybe has that preconceived notion or has some sort of fear about opening up their systems to offshore and nearshore talent.
Yeah, it's a great question. Something that comes up a lot. So first off, where you're hiring, who you're hiring matters. So like if you're hiring a freelancer in Upwork who's juggling 10 different jobs, that person on average is going to be less reliable. I've also hired some great people, but I've also made some problematic hires through there. So first of all, like going and finding a true internal full-time employee who's had a track record working for established agencies, that's a big one for me. So right off the bat, that's already going to alleviate a lot. Now, I will say when I first started to do this, it really forced me to become a much better manager. Because I had to go think about that. How do I ensure things are secure? Also, how do I ensure this person is going to be productive? And so I think a lot of managers rely a little bit too much on just like the ear out there and kind of a feel and don't have a really good performance management system. So what it should look like is a true performance management process built around two things. So one is KPIs. In my opinion, every single role in a company should have some sort of performance-based metrics. So that's part one of that. And then part two is quality reviews and quality checks. And so let's say, like we keep going back to a sourcer, so that's a good example. So one, you need to produce X number of qualified candidates per week or within 24 hours of a search, whatever it is. But then part two is, well, I want to make sure when they do go to source, they're actually doing good work. So what you do is once a month, sit down, or one of your team leaders sits down, and we both enter the same Boolean search into the platform of your choice, LinkedIn, Indeed, whatever. And both of you on the side go through, say, the first 50 profiles together. And you're going, they're good, they're not good, they're good, they're not good. And your sourcer's doing the same thing. Then you compare lists. And every single time you both have the same answer, you get a point and you give them a score out of 50. And if you're doing that repeatedly and managing them to a standard and saying, I need you to have at least 90% consistency with our results, now you're going to know that they're producing high quality work. And you can do that in all sorts of areas of the business. So data integrity too, if you're looking at like, how are you adding things to your ATS?
Yeah.
What do your workflows look like? All of that. Very, very doable. Writing outreach copy, same thing. You can go look at copy they've done. But I recommend having these consistent checkpoints. The big thing I don't recommend is doing any sort of screen monitoring. That's the fastest way to tell somebody, we don't trust you.
Right. Right.
And it's also the fastest way to default from like, who the hell cares how many times they're clicking their screen? It should be about like what the actual output is.
Yeah. I talk a lot about inputs, outputs, and outcomes. I think we as staffing leaders measure output more than outcome. It's a big talking point for me in a couple of talks I've been giving here this year. The input, I worked 40 hours. The output, I made 50 calls. Yeah, but what's the outcome of those calls, right? Like, what did we achieve because of it? That's the KPI that I think we should be looking at more closely and monitoring, right? To your point, I don't necessarily care that they're clicking on their screen X number of times a minute or an hour, whatever it is. Like, what generated because of what we're doing? We keep coming back to this theme, though, of, okay, what is the task at hand? Where's the bottleneck? And then how are we creating consistent coaching to make sure that the individual is performing at a high standard? And it sort of reshapes. I don't think I had this thought going into the conversation that we can just sort of punt these tasks and forget about them. It's actually quite the opposite. It's how do we have somebody else support us in this role, but work alongside them to make sure that they're as successful as possible in doing the task or doing the role, performing the role at a level that we deem as successful. And so it's not just, we don't want to source anymore, so punt it and they better drive us good quality candidates. It's okay, here's what it looks like to find good candidates. Here's how I would find them. It's coaching. It's providing everything that you would provide to somebody if they were working directly in your office in Buffalo, New York.
Yep. And it starts with clear expectations and then doing consistent checks to see if they're meeting those expectations and then coaching them and providing feedback based on that. Like, I'll give another quick example. This was actually an agency owner I was working with yesterday. She gets a lot of her clientele through LinkedIn. That's how she stays in touch with a lot of her contacts. And she's like, I just don't have enough time to keep up with it. I need this person to be able to DM from my account, to check in with people, to put comments on people's posts, etc. I'm like, great. So what you need to do is you need to come up with a criteria of what does a good DM look like. So 1, it has a distinct voice that matches my own. 2, you have add value in your comment. And then 3, on occasion, you add wit. And 4, it never, ever, ever looks like AI, right? So now you have this checklist. And then initially, the idea is like once a week, you go and review 10 comments or DMs, say, well, did you check off these boxes? Yes or no? And then over time, you can reduce that down. But in my opinion, everything can be boiled down to either a KPI or some sort of scorecard that you can go look at that activity and then do periodic spot checks to say, yes, you're meeting expectations. No, you're not.
And then coach through it, right? And improve on because of it.
Yep.
Very good. Yeah, it's interesting. And again, I don't think I came into the conversation thinking that this whole area of the business is just getting rid of tasks. But I don't think I came into the conversation thinking that it would be as much hands-on coaching development to make sure that we get it right. And in very clear terms, I mean, that's what sets the best apart from the ones that are probably failing at this or are having a bad time with their offshore nearshore experience. Right? It's how do you make the best of what it is that you're doing? And I think it is exactly what you're articulating, Greg.
Yeah. And I think what's nice is if you think about this ahead of time, like what are the tasks? What does good look like? How am I going to define success? Now that gives you the right lens when you're hiring. So often I hear somebody, they're like, well, this person can't do the job well. And I'm like, well, yeah, you hired the wrong person because you weren't clear on what good looks like. But I think if you have a clear sense of that, now when you're interviewing candidates or interviewing agencies, like you can very clearly say, I believe this person can do the job or they can.
When you think about offshore, nearshore, is there anything that we didn't talk about in this conversation that you wish we got across?
I think one of the things that I've found helpful that we didn't get to specifically is time internal employees are always going to be the strongest hires. And you see this is the same thing in the US. If you're running a staffing firm, you're typically not going to another staffing firm and saying, hey, can you go find me account executive? who's going to be on your payroll and maybe working half at my agency, half at another agency. No, you laugh, but like the majority of agencies are typically hiring a part-time employee. We're hiring their offshore talent through a staffing agency. The best talent is going to be a true internal employee who's full-time. And I think if it hasn't worked out before, I would look at like, did I actually go out and hire the best? Did I set a high bar? Did I train and manage them to that bar? And usually somewhere along the way, one or multiple of those is missing.
Greg, before I get you to our rapid fire round, I want to give you the floor to talk about yourself and well-oiled machine.
Yeah, appreciate it. So I previously ran AMI Network. We were a $4.2 million gross profit firm between direct hire, RPO, and staffing. 18 of my team members at that agency were based outside of the US, which showed me the magic that can happen when you do get it right. We did a lot of getting it wrong. I founded Well-Oiled Machine to help other agencies replicate that. So we are a recruitment firm for recruitment and staffing firms specializing in international talent. So we help agencies figure out what function in their practice they should be hiring for, where in the world to hire, and then we go out and find world-class talent for those roles.
Beautiful. And our rapid fire round, if you got another second for us.
Yeah.
One book that's fundamentally changed your life.
Ooh, I would say Man's Search for Meaning was a big one for me.
So you're the second person that has mentioned that. I bought it and I got through like half of it, and I feel like it's something that I need to chunk away at differently. I can't remember who suggested that on the show as well. Why did you find so much value in that book? Let me ask you that.
And it's interesting. It's hit me different at different points in life. Like I first read it as an assignment in high school, and I was just like, oh, this is dark. But like it opened my eyes to just like a lot of what struggle really is. And then later in life, that's shifted to meaning and purpose, which I think is something that we all struggle with. I think, especially for entrepreneurs, it's so easy to get caught up in like meaning is generating X amount of revenue or hitting X goal. And like that's fundamentally is like, I think deep down, like even when humanity is at its worst, like there's a fundamental question there for us to solve, which is like, where does meaning come from? And I think the ultimate answer of the book is like, we can create it for ourselves. And it's such a poignant reminder of that.
So I think I was reading it through the lens of just get through this and read the words and not really chunk away at it when I'm ready for it. And oftentimes I need to go back to books. And I've said on this show countless times, the reason I asked this question is one, for the listener, but most importantly, so I can build my own library over here. Because the more I talk to brilliant people, I get introduced to books that I may not have come in contact with in the past. So now that I've heard it a second time, I will certainly go back to it.
Yeah.
And our second question for you, one piece of advice that you would give to somebody just starting in staffing and recruiting, what would you tell them?
Man, I would say get really clear on your why. And this is at any role, whether you're launching an agency or getting started as a recruiter or something else, it's a really, really hard job. And the majority of the day you're failing. And you're going to get hit really hard at times. And if your why is simply not get fired or hit a certain KPI, that's going to fail you at some point. There has to be something bigger that's fueling your fire.
Love that advice. I live by that advice. So I appreciate you saying that and bringing that one back to me. Greg, I had a great time, man. I appreciate coming on the show and sharing all your insights with us, taking the stage with me, my friend. Enjoy that Colorado snow that I am glad we do not have in Buffalo, New York.
I will. I'm actually pretty pumped to go out and get on the hike in a little bit.
Good. Enjoy, my friend. We'll see you soon.